Okay, friends, I have some breaking news for you today. It's a big story that's going to get even bigger, and it has critical information that you need to know right now. It comes courtesy of Virginia Attorney General J. Two Bullets Jones and his chief ally, Abigail Spanberger. Jones is willingly violating a court order and court injunction on firearm background checks and is now or soon will be in contempt of court. In short, Jones and Spanberger, the dynamic duo, are defying a court injunction on background checks in private firearm sales. Up until about 2 minutes ago, the Virginia State Police said they wouldn't be conducting background checks. That's until Jones and Spanberger stepped in. They're willing to ignore the rule of law in this matter, and it's only going to get worse from here. By the end of this video, you're going to have all the information you need about this latest unconstitutional attack by Democrats on law-abiding citizens and what's going to happen next. Hey, everybody, welcome back to Smart Girl Politics. We are your go-to source for what's happening here in the formerly free Commonwealth of Virginia. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button down below. Things are moving fast, and you don't want to miss a thing. My name is Terry, and I'll be your guide on this wild ride that is Virginia. Okay, let's dig in. If you're a fan of the rule of law, like most of us are, be prepared to be outraged again about what's going on here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. To best understand what's happening right now about these background checks, we have to go back a few years. And for that, we're going to go over to our friends at Guns and Gadgets to explain.
All right, first let's establish the background here. Back in 2020, Virginia Democrats passed what they call the Universal Background Check Law. This law...
Just a note here, 2020 is Ralph Northam. He is the governor, Democrat Ralph Northam, the most recent worst Virginia governor until Spanberger came along. So this was not under Youngkin, this was under Ralph Northam.
Required private firearms transfers between law-abiding Virginians to go through a dealer and a government approval process. Now, GOA, GOF, Gun Owners Foundation, and VCDL immediately challenged that law in court, and after years of litigation, they secured a major victory. A Virginia court of the Circuit Court issued a permanent injunction against enforcement of the law. And that injunction was a massive win for gun owners because it meant the state was ordered not to enforce the unconstitutional law. And that's important. A court order is not a suggestion. It is not political guidance. It is not optional. When a judge issues an injunction, government agencies are legally bound by it unless a higher court overturns it. That is literally how constitutional government works. But according to GOA and VCDL, Virginia officials decided to play games anyway last night. Based on statements released by GOA and VCDL and comments and conversations I've had with both of them this morning, they allege that the Virginia Attorney General's office ordered the Virginia State Police to alter procedures in a way that continued enforcement behavior despite the standing injunction. And like I said, the Virginia State Police changed their website to indicate that today. And if those allegations are accurate, and I know they are, then what we are looking at here is government officials attempting to sidestep a judicial ruling because they don't like the outcome.
All right, it's important to note that at the time Virginia Democrats passed the universal background check, the law in Virginia allowed 18, 19, and 20-year-olds to buy handguns. But because the federal background system rejects handgun purchases by people under 21, Virginia developed a workaround. Virginia State Police would show up at gun shows and run private sale checks through a different state process, which allowed the 18, 19, and 20-year-olds to pass checks where legally eligible under state law. Now, fast forward to October of 2025. Lynchburg Circuit Court Judge Patrick Yeats issued a permanent injunction that halted all background checks for private firearms sales in Virginia, including gun show sales. The issue wasn't just about the Second Amendment, but also equal protection for gun buyers in that 18, 19, 20-year range. All right. Fast forwarding again to April of 2026, just last month, Virginia Democrats decide not only to make it illegal for 18, 19, and 20-year-olds to purchase firearms, they also made a move to close the background check loophole. And just because I didn't make it clear, this is last month, this is April, this is the floor debate over the bill to close this loophole.
Amongst many bills that fly in the face of the Bruin ruling, 1525 not only flies in the face of the ruling of the United States Supreme Court, it also flies in the face of the ruling of the 24th Circuit of the Virginia Court. In fact, in the 24th Circuit of the Virginia Court, Judge Yates wrote in reference to this very act, the court finds itself left with one option at this time, and that is to strike the statute entirely for the reasons set forth herein. The court grants the plaintiff's request for permanent injunctive relief, enjoining the administration, enforcement, and imposition of Virginia Code Section 18.2-308.2:5. Now, here's the problem. What this bill does is directs the Virginia State Police to enforce something that a court in the Commonwealth of Virginia has said very clearly they cannot enforce. That notwithstanding, the Fifth Federal Circuit has already ruled on this very issue in favor of the folks on this side of the building, saying that you cannot do this. In fact, currently, the United States Supreme Court is considering certiorari on that, but I would argue they need not do so, because if you read Bruin, its clear meaning is that the interpretation of the Second Amendment should be consistent with that at the time of which it was founded. So notwithstanding men and women of this country who have bravely donned the uniform of the United States, who we asked to carry actual weapons of war at age 18, we can look back to the age of the young men and women who fought to free America some 250 years ago. I understand exactly what's about to happen, and I understand that you all campaigned on some people campaigned on affordability. This is going to come forward. It is going to be challenged. It is going to fail. I am going to say I told you so, not with glee, but with regret, because we will have wasted lots of people's time and millions of the hardworking taxpayers' dollars in the Commonwealth of Virginia defending what is, Mr. Speaker, in fact, clearly, not only according to federal court, but state court, indefensible.
This past Tuesday, Cardinal News reported that Virginia State Police were, in fact, not doing background checks on private firearm sales. This was just published on May 26. Background checks for private firearm sales not happening 1 month after bill's emergency enactment. Let's go down here to the good stuff. As of May 21st, the Virginia State Police website said that private background checks are no longer available/required due to the October ruling. Robin Lawson, spokesperson for Virginia State Police, said they are working diligently with the administration to effectuate the provisions of the new legislation when asked about the lack of checks for private firearm sales. Lawson did not respond when asked what that meant. So that news apparently did not sit well. They saw Cardinal News' report from earlier in the week and decided, they need to not only take action, they need to sit in defiance of a court order. As of today, here's what the Virginia State Police website says. Right there in big letters, private sale background checks are now available in direct conflict to the court injunction. And at the behest of Abigail Spanberger and J. Two Bullets Jones. I have a question. Could J. Jones pass a background check with his history, his sordid, checkered history of wishing death not only upon his political opponent, but the opponent's young children? And the governor herself has confirmed, her spokesperson has confirmed that she and Jay Jones have banded together to instruct the Virginia State Police to carry out these illegal background checks. We go over to Virginia Scope. Virginia State Police to resume background checks on private gun sales. That was quick. A spokesperson for Governor Abigail Spanberger confirmed to Virginia Scope on Wednesday night that Virginia State Police will resume conducting background checks for private gun sales after a court order paused the practice last October. It was a permanent injunction, so I think pause is quite an interesting word. This comes 2 days after Cardinal News published a story about an emergency clause on legislation signed by Spanberger to immediately require background checks on all gun sales that was not being enacted by Virginia State Police. Philip Van Cleve, the founder of the gun rights advocacy group Virginia Citizens Defense League, announced the change on social media after being notified. This is Van Cleve on Twitter. X, whatever. The Virginia Attorney General's office just informed us that the Virginia State Police intend to enforce universal background checks for private sales in direct disregard of the court order halting enforcement. The court order that Van Cleve is referencing prevented Virginia State Police from conducting background checks for private sales of weapons at gun shows, while a lawsuit in Lynchburg Circuit Court is pending over the requirement's validity. The Virginia State Police website was updated Thursday morning to show that background checks on private sales are now available in Spanberger's substitute for HB 1525, which flew under the radar. She included an emergency clause that reinstates background checks on private gun sales. The emergency clause put the law into effect immediately upon passage, even though it's not legal, which Brandon Jarvis doesn't question here clearly. And I do just want to bop over to Philip Van Cleve's X account so that we can get the latest. And this was him last night. Breaking, the Virginia Attorney General's office just informed us, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so we already know that's in direct disregard of the court order halting enforcement. Gun Owners of America and VCDL, their motion for contempt of court will be filed tomorrow. Let me do a quick check and see if he's got an update. He has not updated it yet, so I'm assuming that that's in motion right now. So this will go back to the courts where Virginia Democrats are going to lose again. They're really on a losing streak. And Virginia taxpayers will be left paying the check for the Democrat Party's unconstitutional antics again. It was estimated, I think, that $10 million was spent on their ridiculous gerrymandering effort and fighting it in court, in the Virginia State Supreme Court and the United States Supreme Court. They spent $10 million of our tax money up in flames because they don't think they need to follow the law. I pose this question to you all. If Abigail Spanberger, J. Two Bullets Jones, and Virginia Democrats are willing to ignore this court injunction, will they actually follow any laws they don't agree with? I think we know from the failed gerrymander attempt that they are reckless, feckless, and don't think the laws apply to them. So it's your turn now, my friends. Hit me up in the comments and let me know if you think the Virginia State Police should enforce Spanberger's background check law despite the court injunction. Oh, and if you need to hear all about how a growing number of Virginia Commonwealth's attorneys and sheriffs are refusing to enforce the unconstitutional Spanberger gun grab, you're going to want to watch this video right here. That's all I got for you today, guys. It's a real quick one today. I wanted to keep you updated on this because it is critical information for you to have. Until next time, take care. Be safe out there. Bye.